Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of my Factorio Season 2 playthrough. My name is Pooper and you might recognize me from a couple of these bases I've designed over here in the past. But if not, and you would like to check those out now, you can do so by clicking in the upper right hand link over here. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get started with the first episode of our new 0.16 map. So we're in the starting area of our new 0.16 map where we now have the addition of cliffs in the game as well as a much more high definition environment than we're used to. So we're going to go ahead and before we can really get too started with mining any ore of any kind, we do have to get some fuel. So I'm going to take advantage of these trees nearby and go ahead and mine those real quick. But first let's go ahead and get an iron axe before we forget. But one thing I do want you guys to keep in mind is that actually the biggest environmental difference that we'll be noticing with this gameplay is that we're actually playing on a railroad map. And the reason for that is I wanted a little bit more of a challenge than I've had in the past with getting trains implemented earlier in the game because I tend to be a more slower paced player and tend to take my time getting things that are important like trains implemented. So we'll go ahead and see how that turns out, but before we can really advance with anything, we need to start with the basics, which in our case is getting some iron up and running. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually overlap our burner mining drill where the coal and the iron patch meets here. And one thing that will allow us to do is that even though the miner won't be able to fuel itself, it will be able to fuel our stone furnace, which we're going to have direct fed into the miner. And that's because the miner should feed a little bit of the iron and the coal into the furnace and therefore fuel it at the same time. So we can't make any more, but we can supply this with some wood that we have. And while we're waiting for that to pop out its product, we're going to go ahead and now get some stone. Now I did do a preliminary walk around the map just to kind of see what my environment was like around here, even though I did a preliminary map preview before generating it. But I just kind of wanted to get a more in-depth view. And this is basically our best stone patch that we have as an option. There isn't anything else currently visible on our map for stone. So what we're going to do instead is actually mine some of the smaller stone nodes. And that way we don't have to travel so far to get any. So I think I did see a couple stone nodes around here somewhere. And so sorry about it being dark, you guys. That is something I'll want to fix as early as possible in the game, is to get some lights going as soon as possible. And also with that in mind, we are not running any mods with this new map. Not even any quality of life mods at the moment. It's all vanilla. But here we have our first stone patch, and as you can see, we do know we can mine it because it has the yellow background around it. Some of these that look like they might be able to be mined actually are deceptive and you cannot mine them. Those included, looks like they could be mined. Here, this one can be though. I don't think we need too many of these. Even a little bit of stone goes a long way in the early game. But we can always use a little bit more fuel, and I don't like these dead logs hanging around. So I don't mind getting these for now. Also, the logs on the ground are much quicker to mine than the ones that are standing. But we'll just do a couple more of these nodes that are around the lake here. And I think we will use this lake to get us our first bit of water supply for our steam engines that we're going to be hopefully getting before the end of today's episode. We'll see. I tend to be a slower paced player, so maybe that's a little bit too ambitious of a goal, but who knows. One thing I do want to try and avoid doing though is using the lake as my focal point this time around, because that's something I've done in the past couple of bases I've worked on. So I do need a little bit something different this time. If you guys actually have any suggestions for what I could do with endgame based design or even a mid-game based design, I would love to hear your feedback. I'm a little stumped as it is with how to design our mid and endgame bases, so I would love to hear what comments you have. Just put them down below. So this icon over here tells us what product it is mining. So it looks like coal is what it's trying to mine, but the reason why the miner is stopped is because it has nowhere to put the coal. So we'll go ahead and finally get rid of this wood here, and then you can see it is automatically replaced by the coal that it is mining. And we do already have 30 iron plate, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. And that means we can now make 3 more burner mining drills and several stone furnaces. I think we'll make all the drills that we can though, and then we'll do a couple more stone furnaces. I do want to focus on getting iron more than anything, just early game, and then we'll focus on copper a little bit later. But let's go ahead and kind of just zigzag this over the coal and iron patches where those meet. And let's put our stone furnaces just below the miners so that they are still directly fed. And we do need to kickstart these miners, so we'll go ahead and put the remaining wood that we have in there. And let's borrow some of the coal from that stone furnace and put it in this guy. And then eventually these stone furnaces should be fed with fuel from the miners above them, although that might take a little bit of time. So in the meantime, let's go ahead and we will farm a couple more trees, and we do have a little patch over here. It doesn't hurt to supplement our fuel, plus we'll need the wood for some boxes and things like that a little later on, and of course some electrical poles. We'll definitely need the wood for that. One thing I think would be really cool at some point in the Factorio game would be to have direct farming of trees implemented, so we wouldn't have to farm them ourselves. That would be pretty cool. Although I do suppose boss can do that later and mid-game even, but it might be cool to have it done early game, like with a woodcutter or something. But I think we'll just finish up this little patch that we have nearby, and then we'll head back up there. We're going to need as many burner mining drills as possible so that we can start mining some more coal to feed into our miners, and then of course some copper after that. So let's go ahead and take our iron plate. Then you can see our fuel is actually beginning to build up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and just steal from there, put it in there, and then looks like these are all fueled right now, so that's good. I won't worry about putting any wood in here, but this is only mining coal. So it's actually our miner that needs to be fueled right now, so we'll go ahead and do that. There we go, and that's about to run out of wood, so we'll take half and put it in there. Okay, so these are fairly self-sufficient, at least the stone furnaces are. We do have to worry about getting fuel directly fed into the miners themselves. So our next priority is to get one other miner at the very least. Let's do 2 though. And we're going to be using our miner on our coal patch that we have here, and we're only going to be farming coal. So I want to make sure that there is no overlap over the iron, which there is not, if we can see when we look over at the right hand side. So we're going to use this one to end up feeding these miners here, and we'll do that via belt, which we can make a couple, which isn't a whole lot at this point. So we're going to borrow the iron that we have ready to go. So now we can make a couple more. I think that should be plenty to at least get us to the last miner over here. And then we'll face our other miner. So this one will directly feed into that one. And then any of the surplus coal we can directly take from these miners, or they'll be put onto the belt and fed down into the miners over here. So we will end up making all of those transport belts. You can do that by doing a shift left click, and it will make all of the ones that are an option to be made, which for us is only 15 at the moment, but that's better than nothing. And then do we have any coal we can take? Yes, so we're just borrowing some coal from that one to get our coal production kick-started with this miner here. Can we borrow a little bit more? I'm just taking half stacks. There we go. And this one is turned off right now because there's nowhere for the end result to spit out into. But as soon as we get our transport belts, we can see more coal actually getting mined from this one over here. Now we have to think of what configuration do we want to get this done. We could probably do something like this and just have it zig around, kind of in a cool shape. Probably really unnecessary this early on in the game, but it never hurts to be thinking about the aesthetics of the game. We do need some burner inserters. Eventually these will start to feed themselves as well once there is coal on the belt lines, but we'll have to kickstart their fuel. And then one last burner inserter right there. There we go. So as you can see, the first little bit of coal, it fed into itself. And the same thing is going to happen with these inserters as well. They're going to feed themselves and then they will feed into the miners and supply it with fuel that way. One thing I didn't consider is that the inserters occasionally have a hard time picking up the fuel, just like this one did when the belt is at a curve. So I probably could edit this a little bit to make it more efficient, but I won't worry about it right now. This will stack up just like it is, and then they will be able to pick up the fuel a lot easier. So next thing, let's go ahead and make a couple more inserters, and what we'll do is actually a couple more belts so that we can do a direct loop, just like that. So that way you can see that there will be a consistent loop cycle, so this miner will never run out of fuel because it will borrow it from there, essentially going clockwise, and then the surplus again goes onto the belts to feed into our miners. And then of course our stone furnaces again, we don't have to worry about fuel because we're getting the fuel directly from our products mined from the miners here. So that's a pretty good system to get us started in the early game. Now I think we can go ahead and worry about getting some copper started. I'm not seeing too many better copper options throughout the map except this little one over here. So again, that will be another reason to get our trains up and running as soon as possible. But we'll go ahead and just put this nearby. I do want to put it at the side closest to the rest of our miners and things like that so we don't have to travel as far. And I'm already basically out of iron plates, so I'm going to have to go back for that, and then we can do some more stone furnaces and belts and things. What I'm doing to get the iron plate right now, if you aren't already aware, is just Control and then left clicking, and that gives me the entire stack or what has been created of the products. So we now have 150 iron plate. That's good. So we can make a couple more burner miners and a couple more stone furnaces. Head down here. Now we can really focus on getting our copper production up and running. We do have to worry about bringing fuel to these guys though, so I will do that I think by hand initially, but then when we have enough belts, and I don't think 38 will quite do it, maybe it will, we'll see in just a second, but before we worry about that, we'll go ahead and do our furnaces. Again, we're doing direct insertion. That's just the most efficient way to do it early game. And then let's see if we can borrow a little bit of coal. There we go, and that way I don't take too much on accident. But let's go ahead and take the fuel that we have and we'll get this started. That didn't take us very far. Can I borrow a little bit more? Yes. Okay. These are now fueled up with a very little amount of coal, but it's better than nothing. So now we have our first copper plate production. 7 is all we have, but it is, again, better than nothing. We do technically have enough to make 1 electric mining drill. But we can make our offshore pump, which is definitely one of the first things we need to get electricity. So we'll go ahead and make that now by hand. And then once we finally get power, we can go ahead and start doing research and getting automation going. So we'll again continue to just pick up our copper plate from the stone furnaces themselves. We won't worry about inputting them into a box or anything. That's just skipping an unnecessary step at this point in the game. So we'll just keep waiting for these to get done, but we can supplement by adding in even more mining drills when we can, and more stone furnaces, but it looks like we are now out of our stone supply. So we'll have to resupply on stone in just a second here. But what we can now make, actually, is some steam engines and one boiler, which is again reliant on stone. So looks like stone is really the thing we need. Before we go ahead and get a little bit more, I do want to just continue to add to our coal supply. So we'll do that by extending our line a little bit here. Whoops. I meant to click inserter, but I do technically need more of the mining drills anyway. And then we can just start clicking and getting the excess coal that is already in here. And we'll again run down our belt and pick up the extra from there too. Okay. Now, our next mission will be a little bit more stone. We've got another node here. We're really not too far off from electricity though. And then of course the main priority after that will be getting automation. And then we don't have to make so many things out of our pocket. Eventually we'll run over to that big stone patch all the way to the left-hand side and get a miner down over there, but I don't think that's necessary right now. These should be able to supply us, I think, for a little while without having to worry about automatic mining of those quite yet. And last one we will mine, and then we'll head back up to our production area. So that should be plenty to last us for a little while. I don't think we'll have to go back for a little bit at least. Oh, let's see. We'll get this one along the way though, since it's nearby. Alright. So that's a good supply. We have our water pump here as well. Oh! That's cool. We now have these little like green like borders that now tell you where you can technically put the offshore pump. I think we'll go ahead and use this water supply though, just because right now it is closer than the lake down here. We do need some pipe. Can I make pipe yet? Yes, I can. We'll just do a couple of those, and a couple of these, and then we'll pretty much just have to line them all up and then we'll have electricity. Let's go see how our miners are doing. These guys over here are already out of fuel. We can remedy that a little bit with what I have on hand. Let's see though if our fuel supply will actually extend down here. If so, that would be really nice. Or what I can do... Oh, no. I was going to say I could add just some separate miners, but I'm going to go ahead and just extend off of this line. We'll do just like that. And it couldn't quite make it all the way, but we can build a couple more transport belts, which we will do right now. We'll borrow from our belt line again. And yes, we have a couple built now. We'll just do a line back here so that our coal can get fed into the miners here, but we'll also actually have to branch off, and we do this time have to worry about supplying our stone furnaces. So what we can do, because I don't want to have to do it by hand, and because we don't have splitters yet, is we can do an inserter that way, and so it will pick up a little bit from this line and feed onto this belt. And then we'll do a couple inserters. Oh, not that we can make them right now, but we will. And we'll put them here so that coal is again then fed into the stone furnaces here. Let's go ahead and grab a little bit more of our products then. And what's wrong? Why aren't these guys? Oh. I didn't think of that. So one problem with this setup is that once the fuel capacity is full, which in this case is 50, it will stop the mining and smelting production because it has no more room to put the product. Ooh. What I can do actually though is just take all of our fuel and it will kind of restart these, so to speak. And then that gives me another source of coal to feed these guys by hand for now. Okay, now we can do just a couple more inserters. Two more should be able to supply all of these here. We will have to wait a little while before we get much coal onto this line though, unfortunately, just because these will take priority. But what I can do instead is we'll borrow some of the coal to have it just go back onto feeding some more miners that we'll have set up here that will feed directly onto this side of the line. We do need a couple more burner inserters. And then I can do belt just like that. All right. So once coal is put onto this belt line, these should pick it up and supply it into these extra 3 miners that we now have. And then we'll now have coal getting directly put onto this belt and therefore surpassing the priority that these ones have over here. Now let's go ahead and check and see if we can actually get our electricity up and running now. I do want at least one more steam engine, so we have 4. So the ratio for steam electricity, by the way, is 1 water pump, which we have, and that can supply, I believe it is a ratio of 20 of the boilers to 40 of the steam engines. And that is basically max efficiency and max energy output. So we'll go ahead and connect up our pipe here. I do like to use undergrounds just from our water source to where the steam engines and our boilers will start, just because I like some walking room. So I think I'll actually extend that out a little bit further. We'll do right there. That way I have really good walking room just between this area of the lake here. We'll go ahead and do a pipe there, although we do need a couple more. Looks like that's ultimately what I'm missing out on before we can proceed much further with our electricity. We'll grab a little bit more iron if we have it. Which we do. Good, so we now have 60. These should eventually keep working. We just have to make sure that we don't get too full on our coal. So I'm just going to intermittently pick up the coal that we have in the furnaces so that they don't get too full. These are already starting to kick in and start working, which is fantastic. These will start to get automatically fed some coal in just a minute. So with the remaining iron plate that we do have, we'll make a couple more pipes. And let's go ahead and put our first boiler down. let's see. I want to say we do have to space these out a little bit. I'm pretty sure, because if you don't, then you may not leave enough room for the poles, but we actually don't have to do that. So, oh well, we're going to stick with this layout that we have already going. We'll put our electric poles in the middle here. Just like that. They do have to be within the range of the steam engines, or else the steam engines won't get turned on. It will continue to have like that yellow blinking light that was on here just a second ago. We do need fuel over here. So we will have to worry about getting fuel brought all the way over here to these boilers, but initially I may have to just do that by hand, which is okay. We shouldn't be having too huge of a demand on our electricity. But we'll go ahead and just do 4. So this so far is the correct ratio. We're well on our way to meeting that, the 1 to 20 to 40. But for now, I try to stick with just 2 steam engines per 1 boiler, and then have these supplied by just 1 water pump should do it for up to 40 of these steam engines. So now we can go ahead and finish supplying our electricity that we now have over to our mining section over here. But I think we'll wait and do that for next episode, and we'll get more automation and more electricity going in the next one to come. So for now, I appreciate you guys for joining me for our first episode of Season 2, and I hope you'll stick around for the remaining episodes to come. And I'll be seeing you soon.